Hey guys, welcome to the 2016 Level 1 Tables, Equations and Graphs exam paper. So basically what I'm going to be going through is the entire exam paper, guys. If you haven't done this exam paper yet, what I would recommend is pausing at the start of each question and trying to work out the answer by yourself, and then see how I went about doing the answers. Okay, let's get started with the first question. Okay, so in this first question, we've got Tama and Peter, who have three different babysitters to choose from. We've got Matt, Talia, and Sasha. At the moment, we can see Matt and Talia's graphs being represented here. So the first question is, how much would Matt be paid if he babysits for 4.5 hours? So if we have a look at it, Matt is the little gray line here, and at 4.5 hours, Matt's got to be paid $50. All right, so our first answer is going to be $50, and I think this is a U grade for this particular question. Actually, I'm not going to use U. I'm going to use Achieved Merit Excellence, guys, just to keep it going, keep the theme going. So there's going to be an achieved question. All right, nice and simple, the first one. Okay, let's go to question 1B. Okay, for the second part of the question, it actually says, once Matt has babysat for 5 or more hours, he increases his charge for the additional hours to $15 an hour, or part of an hour that he babysits. So what we have is at 5 hours, after 5 hours, he's going to be charging $65, because if you think about it, so $65 is going to be here. Now that circle there is going to be a filled circle, and up to 6 hours. And it's going to have an open circle at the 6 hour mark, because at the 6 hour mark, he's going to be charging $80. And that's going to go up till the 7th hour. I just realized I made a mistake. It's supposed to be $80. So what we have is at 6th hour, he's going to be charging $80. And there's going to be a little hole to say that for the 7th hour, it's actually going to be $95. Okay, really interesting with this one, because if you don't put the open circle or you put it just like filled in, then you will end up with an achieved grade. But according to the marking schedule here, if you do it this way, you actually get an excellence grade for it. Okay, let's have a look at question 1A3. Okay, so with 1A3, it would help if we have the previous diagram. So we know that that was going to look like this, and then it was AT. Like this. Sorry, I just had to draw the two diagrams quickly. So the question says, find the average amount Matt charges per hour if he babysits for six hours. So what we do know is for 6 hours, Matt actually charges $80. So if we want to find the average amount he charges per hour, we can just go 80 divided by 6, which equals to $13.33. Okay. And basically this is going to get you a merit. Now sometimes you might actually make a mistake, and I'm talking about people that didn't actually see their open hole. They might actually see Matt charging $65 for 6 hours, and say for example if you do 65 over 6 as one of your answers, then the maximum grade you're looking at is an achieved. Okay, that's question 3A3, guys. Now we go to question A4. Okay, with A4, you've got Talia, who charges an average of $10 per hour for any amount of time she works. This is shown in the graph below with the red line. Give the equation of the graph. Now, some of you that actually see it, you can straight away see that Talia charges $10 per hour. So you can just write an equation straight away. Just go y equals to 10x. That that's it. I mean, that's what's going to get you an achieved. There might be some people that might actually need to do the y equals mx plus c version. If you're going to do y equals mx plus c, then have a look at where the y-intercept is. It's at 0, which means your c value is 0. And then in terms of gradient, your m, you got to figure out what the rise over run is. And in this case, you can see that it's 3 is the run, 30 is the rise. So you're going to get y equals rise over run is 30 over 3, x plus 0, which means simplifying this, you're going to get 30 divided by 3 is 10, and you get 10x. Okay, you don't need to show all this working. You can straight away do this part here and just be finished with that question. Okay, so we now go to question 1a, part 5. So in this part, you've got Sasha. She's going to be babysitting for up to 7 hours for $55. So what we have is, I think because she says up to 7 hours for $55, we can say that, I think we have to assume that she will charge $55 for the whole time that she's there, in the maximum of 7 hours. So if that's the case, this is what Sasha's line is going to look like. Up to 7 hours at $55. All right, now it says make recommendations on who Tama and Peter should have as their babysitter based on the amount that each babysitter charges. So if you look at it, first off, we got to actually figure out what this point right here is. Okay, now what we do know is Sasha at that point charges $55. So we need to figure out when Talia is going to charge $55. Now we know that Talia's equation is equal to 10x. I'm going to try and do it in a different color here, folks. So with Talia, I've got 10x, and we want to know when that is equal to $55. So when we rearrange this, we're going to get x is 55 divided by 10. So x is 5.5 hours. So I'm looking at this particular point here where it's 5.5 hours. Now this part is really important, because the way you're going to write your statement for recommendations for this is you got to use that 5.5. Because if you think about it, if the time is less than 5.5 hours, okay, if it's less than 5.5 hours, the red line is the cheapest. The red line is Talia. So we're going to say Talia is the cheapest. And then if you look at the t above 5.5, so when t is bigger than 5.5, we can kind of see that what have we got? When it's above 5.5, the blue line, which is Sasha, should really put that here. Sasha is the cheapest. All right. I mean, there's one other place you can have a look at, particularly here, t less than 3. If you look at t is less than 3, that's also, you can also say that Talia is still cheap. Oops. And also between 3 hours and 5.5 hours, Talia is still cheap as well. I mean, there's so many ways you can actually write this. I'm just showing you guys how many different ways you could have written the answer. But the one important thing you need to write is Matt is never cheap. Okay, because if you look at it, that gray line is always above the red line, and even after, I think, 6 hours, remember he started charging like 15 bucks an hour after that. So as you can see, that graph is always going to be underneath, above the red line, and so he'll never be the cheapest. So in terms of grading for this particular question, it says 1 region correct is achieved, 2 regions is merit, 3 correct descriptions is excellence. Okay, so you need 3 points for excellence. Okay, let's go to question 1b. Alright guys, for this particular question, you can actually do this in the graphics calculator and get an answer. If you have a look at one of my playlists where it says graphics calculator tips, in there I actually show you guys how to calculate an equation of a parabola given 3 points. So the idea is that you still got to pick up 3 points from here. The points I'm going to use are 0.50, -30, and I need one more point, and I'm going to use this point right here, which happens to be 0, -3. Now if you take these 3 points, put it in the graphics calculator, you should get an equation of y equals 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. Okay, I think that's the final answer that you get from the graphics calculator, which is y equals 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. So have a look at that video. If I don't forget, if somebody can remind me, I'll put a link on the description so you can have a look as well. Okay, but the reason why I'm going to show it a different method, I'm going to show you guys how to do this using the vertex form, because it actually makes the next part of this question extremely easy if you can write this parabola in a vertex form. All right, now unfortunately we don't know what the vertex is, because the vertex is right here. All right, that point we actually don't know what it is. We got to figure it out. But what we can do is do a little bit of algebra and actually work out the equation of this parabola. So the first thing we know is the x-intercepts are at -3 and 0.5. So guys, as usual, this question you might find a different way of doing it. If you find it, fantastic. This is how I've been working around it, so bear with me on this. All right, so we got y equals a times x plus 3 multiplied by x minus 0.5. That's the first thing you got to do, because when we do that, what happens is, because we've got to write the opposite versions. Apologies about the noise, guys. I think I've picked the worst day to record with the number of airplanes and motorbikes going across my place. But anyway, where was I? So we've got the x-intercepts, and when we rewrite it, we've got to write it the opposite way, so that's how we know where the x-intercepts are. So now we got to figure out what the a value is. Now to figure out the a value, we need to use the point 0, -3. So I'm going to use the point 0, -3 and find out what the a value is. So because x is equal to 0 and y is equal to -3, I can rewrite this equation as -3 is equal to a multiplied by x, which is 0, plus 3 multiplied by x minus 0.5, which is just 0. So what I've got is -3 equals a multiplied by 3 multiplied by -0.5. So rearranging this, I've got -3 equals, what do I have? 3 times -0.5 is -1.5. And then a is equal to -3 divided by -1.5. Therefore, I can say a is equal to 2. So the other way you could write this equation is y equals to 2 multiplied by x plus 3 multiplied by x minus 0.5. Now, as I said, we want to write this in a vertex form if we want to make that next question really easy. It's kind of like doing the hard yards right now, but trust me guys, the excellence question will become so much more easier if you can actually do the vertex form here. So how do we do the vertex form? We know the vertex form looks like this: y equals a. There's many ways of writing this, guys. You might see in so many different ways. I usually use this: x minus h squared plus k. No, sorry, not plus k. I'm gonna go plus v this time. I think I've myself have changed. There's so many different ways of doing this, but anyway, what it actually means is that h and v is the vertex point right there. Okay, so we can actually figure out what the x value of the vertex is, because what we do know is there is a line of symmetry through here. So we want to find out the halfway point of -3 and 0.5. So to figure out halfway of -3 and 0.5, we need to add the two values and divide by 2, which means we're going to get -2.5 divided by 2, which is -1.25. Okay, so that's what h is. We know what a is because we figured out in the previous section, which is 2. So now we just got to figure out what that little v is going to be. So to do that, again, I'm going to use the point 0, -3. So if I use 0, -3, I've got, so far in my equation, I have y equals 2 times x minus -1.25 squared plus v. And I'm going to get y is -3 equals 2. X is equal to 0. Negative and negative is plus, so it's 1.25 squared plus v. So I've got -3 is equal to 2 times 1.25 squared plus v, and -3 equals, I've got 3.125 plus v, and so v is equal to -6.125. So as you can see, that point -6.125 is the y coordinate, and the x coordinate is -1.25. So the vertex form can be written like this: y is equal to 2 x plus 1.25 squared minus 6.125. Okay, now what's really funny is that you could have done this in the graphics calculator and got this equation right there. You'd be looking at a merit grade. You do all this working, you still be looking at a merit grade. But as I told you guys, the next question becomes so much more easier because of this equation here. Okay, so let's have a look at the next question. I know this was long, guys, I apologize for it, but trust me, it's worth knowing this. So the next question, it actually says the graph is then translated a units to the right and up b units, and they're asking you for the equation of the translated graph, and they want the x value at the vertex. Now that's why I asked you guys to write this in a vertex form, because in the vertex form the equation looks like this: y equals to x plus 1.25 squared minus 6.125. So if you're moving a units to the right, then you just got to write it like this: y equals to x plus 1.25. Now a is being moved to the right side, so if it's being moved to the right, it becomes negative. So that's this part here. That's going to become -a bracket squared minus 6.125, and then you've got up b units, which means plus b. Okay, now that's your equation of the translated graph. That's it, you're done. And to get the x value at the vertex, so the vertex is just going to be basically, remember I said hk, so this part right here is going to be h, the negative version of it. This part is going to be k. So the vertex is going to equal something like this. You've got -1.25 plus a, and the y value of it is going to be -6.125 plus b, and that's basically it. So that a lot of work that you did in the previous question actually helps you in the next question, and this just gets you a grade of an excellence straight away. Initial equation, I think, gets you up to a merit when I think they're talking about this one here. But yeah, getting that point just becomes so much more easier. Cool, that's it for question 1, guys. I think now we move on to question 2. Alright guys, so for question 2, you're being asked to sketch a graph of the possible range of areas. What I will do is, like looking at this, it's a -x squared, so I straight away know it's going to be a upside down parabola. Alright, So what I want to know is for when a equals to 0, what are the x values? So I mean, you can do this in the graphics calculator. Just plug in these equation in a table format and get set of values. Now once again, guys, there is a video that I've created for how to create a table in a graphics calculator. So I would recommend you to try and do that so you get a set of x and y values. But if you want to do it algebraically, you do it like this: 0 equals minus x squared minus 40x. We need to factorize it. Now the negative symbol, I can get rid of it. I don't really care about it because negative 0 is the same thing as saying positive 0. So I've got 0 equals x squared minus 40x. 0 is equal to x multiplied by x minus 40. And from here I can see that x is equal to 0 or x is equal to 40. So that's where my 2 points are. So x is equal to 0 or x equals to 40. Obviously, that's where the x-intercepts are. It's an upside down parabola, so it's going to look something like this. So I know that it has a line of symmetry when x equals to 20. Okay, so what I could do is I can take the 20 and substitute it into my area equation. So I've got negative 20 squared minus 40 times 20. And what I should get is negative 400 minus 800. And if I do that, I end up with area is equal to 400. So when x equals to 20, area is 400. And there I've got my shape now. So sorry about the really bad parabola shape, but I think that's the best I can do. Okay, now notice that I haven't actually drawn past the first quadrant, because for starters, if I go like this, that actually saying, I mean, I'm talking about this area here. If I continue with this parabola here, that's incorrect because that's going to have negative area. And same thing with this. If I go below, after 40, it's going to have negative area, and it really doesn't make sense to have negative area. So that's what the accurate graph is. So with that blue line, if you just have the blue line, you should be looking at a merit. If you have the two orange lines, then you're going to be getting the achieved. Surprisingly, I've actually answered the second question, because the second question is what's the maximum possible area of the rectangles. I've already done that here, which is worth and achieved. So I just need to write down that it's actually 400. Maximum area is 400. Okay, let's go to the next question. So the next question, it says, for what values of x are areas less than 300 centimeters squared? So remember, our parabola looks something like this, right? Where that was 400, that was 0, and that was 40. So what we're asked right now is when it's 300, for what values of x? And straight away you can see that there's two values of x when it actually hits 300. For those of you guys that are really good at algebra, this is what you're trying to do. You've got negative x squared. What was our equation? Negative x squared minus 40x equals, so we're trying to figure out when it's less than 300. Okay, so for less than 300, we got to write it like this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys do it. It doesn't matter even if you put equals, because as long as you understand the zones, you can still work around it. I'm going to put this as negative x squared plus 40x. I'm going to put equals just to show you guys how this question actually works out. So rearranging this, I'm going to have 0 equals x squared minus 40x plus 300. And now I need to factorize it. Now I told you guys I'm doing this by algebraic method. So we got x minus 30 and x minus 10. Therefore, x is equal to 30 and 10. I hope this comes back for those of you guys that did the MCAT. 30 and 10. So that's my two values right here, where x is equal to 10 and 30. Now, if you're not familiar with this particular method, then the best way for you to do it is go to your graphics calculator, I will try and make a video for this. I probably will forget. If someone could remind me, it would be great. I will show you guys how to actually do this in a graphics calculator, where you can get the two values of 10 and 30 using a graphics calculator as well. Okay. I mean, just a quick idea is that in the graphics calculator, you need to put two equations. Your first equation would be y equals negative x squared minus 40x. Your second equation would be y equals to 300. And you need to press G-solve and find intersect. I think it's something like that. That's what you need to do, and that actually gives you your two values. But just the two values is not going to be enough, guys, because it actually says for what values of x are areas less than 300 centimeters. If you just find 30 and 10, you're actually going to get no grades, because you haven't actually answered the question. So if I think about it, for what values of x is the area less than 300, it's actually here. So if x is between 0 and 10, it's going to be less than 300, and if it's between 30 and 40, it's also going to be less than 300. So the final answer, the way you should write the final answer, is that it's x has got to be between 0 and 10, and x has got to be between 30 and 40 for the area to be less than 300. And if you do that, that is going to get you your excellence grade. But if you put equals to, then you're incorrect. So just be careful with how you answer this question. Okay. All right. Next question. The next question says what is the maximum area of another set of rectangles that have an area of this? Okay. So this one, guys, you have to just use a bit of algebra. Let's say we know what this graph looks like. I mean, we just did it before with numbers, right? So we know that it's going to look like this, and the two values are going to be 0, and this one here is going to be m. Now you might wonder, how did I get m so quickly? Well, let's have a look here. If you have a equals negative x squared minus mx, we want to know when area is equal to 0, so we're going to get 0 equals negative x squared minus mx. I'm going to get rid of the negative because negative 0 is just 0. So 0 equals x squared minus mx. Factorizing this, I've got 0 equals x times x minus m. Therefore, I can say that x is equal to 0, or x minus m is equal to 0, and x is equal to m. So that's how I know that's m. Now remember, because of line of symmetry, the distance from here to here is m. So half of that would be m over 2. Okay, and just writing that x value as m over 2 will get you an achieved. In terms of finding the area, we know what the area formula is. Area is equal to minus x squared minus m times x. Now, we know that x is equal to m over 2, so we're going to get m over 2 squared minus m times m over 2. And when we do this, we're going to get negative m squared over 4 minus m squared over 2. All right, carrying on with this, when we simplify this, we're going to get negative m squared over 4 minus, now I've got to have the same denominator, guys, so that'll become 2m squared over 4. And carrying on with this, I'm going to get negative m squared over 4. And the negative times negative would become positive. So my final answer is going to be m squared over 4. Okay, so this part right here gets you a merit. All right, let's go to question 2b. All right, guys, so for this particular question, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch the parabola represented by these points. So my first point is at negative 2, negative 6. So that's my first point. Second point is at negative 1, 0. Third point is at 3, positive 4. And 5, -6. So 5, -6 is going to be here. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to sketch the parabola. But the problem is I've been kind of given points all over the place. So the first step is trying to figure out where the line of symmetry is. Now that's simple because we've got one x coordinate is -2, the other x coordinate is 5 when we have the same y value. So if we split that up into half, we're going to get the line of symmetry. So the line of symmetry, as you can see, is going to be at 1.5 because that length is 7 and 7 divided by 2 is 3.5, and if you go 5 minus 3.5 gives you 1.5. So that's where the line of symmetry is. Okay, so the next step is from this point to this point we're going 6 up and 1 to the right, which means on the other side we've also got to go 6 up but now 1 left. That's what we're going to do. When we do that, we get this point here. Following on from this point, we are going 1, 2, 3, 4 up and 1 right, which means on the opposite side we got to go 4 up, 1 left and 1 right here. Sorry, apologies. Okay, so we've gone 6, 4, and obviously the next one could be, we don't know what that is, right? We don't. But what we do know is we can actually roughly sketch this parabola now. And the parabola roughly sketched is going to look something like this. But make sure you actually go through those points. All right. And there we go. Rough point right there. I'm sorry that's a very crooked line, but for you guys it's quite important that you get a symmetrical parabola. This is not a symmetrical parabola. Trying to draw a symmetrical parabola on a tablet with a stylus is not fun, but you know, that should, yeah, I'm not going to go through that again, guys. You get the idea what I'm trying to say here. But in terms of the grades, you got to give the coordinates of the intercepts. So the x-intercepts, first I'm going to write the x-intercepts. So the x-intercept is at -1, 0 and +4 and 0. The y-intercept is going to be at 0, +4 because that's the y-intercept there. X-intercepts are here and here, and that's what they asked, right? Give the coordinates of the intercepts and the vertex. Now with the vertex, if you really want to know what exactly the vertex is, what you could do is you could actually substitute this. Actually, that's what I would do. I would actually substitute these values in a graphics calculator and actually get the equation. All right. Once I get the equation, I would then substitute 1.5 in that equation to find out what the vertex is, and then come back and write this answer. Okay. Now the other way I taught you guys, remember you could actually use the intercept form. So the intercept is at -1 and +4. So we're going to get a times x plus 1 multiplied by x minus 4. Now you need to choose a point to substitute. I'm going to choose the point 3, 4. Okay, and when I substitute 3, 4 in here, I'm going to get 4 equals a times 3 plus 1 multiplied by 3 minus 4. So what I have is 4 equals a times 4 times -1. And you can see from here that 4 equals -4a, therefore a value is -1. So my equation of this graph is y equals -1 multiplied by x plus 1, x minus 4. Now, this is the second part of this question. If you get the equation of the graph, you get a merit. But we still haven't figured out the vertex. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 1.5 when x equals 1.5 and substitute it to figure out what y is, because that's going to give me my vertex. So I've got y equals -1 multiplied by 1.5 plus 1 multiplied by 1.5 minus 4, and I have y equals -1 times 2.5 times -2.5, and I get an answer of 6.25. So now I take this point and rewrite the vertex as 1.5 and 6.25. Okay, and as you can see, it kind of cuts it at 6.25 right there where the vertex is. Okay, so for this question, getting the coordinates correct, the intercepts correct, and the correct graph, symmetrical parabola, all of the whole package gets you an excellence. All right, but if you get one of those things wrong, but you get 3 things correct, then you get a merit, and if you get 2 things correct, you get an achieved, and so on. Cool, that's it for this question, guys. Let's go to question 3. Okay, guys, so this, obviously we're dealing with an exponential equation. Now, I've actually got a video as well for this, but you know what, I'm going to show you guys anyway. I mean, you might have actually learned this completely in a different way in your school or in your classes, but this is how I do my method. So what I do first is I create a little table with x and y, and I have my first value, which is that's going to be 1 and 1. Then I've got 2 and 2, 3 and 4, 4 and 8. Okay, that's the first thing I kind of do. Then the next step I look at is what's happening to those numbers. So what's happening to the y values? Now y value, between 1 and 2 you're going +1, between 2 and 4 you're going +2, between 4 and 8 you're going +4. And if I was to continue this pattern, it'll become 5, 16, 6, 32, and so on. So you're going to get +8, +16. Now if I look at the light blue numbers, I got to ask this question: what's happening to the light blue numbers? The light blue numbers, every one of them is actually doubling, so it's actually increasing. Well, basically it's getting multiplied by 2. So what you have is you have a general equation for an exponential equation, which is y equals arx plus c. Now the r part is what we've just figured out, the 2. So we can rewrite this as y equals a times 2 to the power of x plus c. Now the thing is, guys, if you know your exponential equations, you can pretty much guess this equation straight away. But if you don't know, you got to use a little bit of simultaneous equations. Even this for people that haven't done algebra, trust me, it's not that difficult. It's basically just working around with these numbers. Have a look anyway how I do this. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use the first. I mean, like, here's a good example. This works if you can actually see where the asymptote is. Now in this particular case, you can see the asymptote, which is the exponential equation. It's never going to touch this line here, the x-axis, which is 0. So basically that little blue line is where so that's equal to 0 when y is equal to 0. When y equals to 0, the exponential graph never actually touches it, which means c is equal to 0. So you can actually write this equation straight away as y equals a times 2x. Now it's just a matter of figuring out what the a value is, and to do that you can substitute any one of these xy points. So I'm going to use 3, 4 for example. So if I use 3, 4, let's actually not use 3, 4, let's actually use a simple one, 1, 1. There we go, 1, 1, which means y is equal to 1, a times 2 to the power of 1. So you're going to get y equals 2a, and then a equals a half. So the equation that I have is y equals half multiplied by 2 to the power of x. So you can rewrite this equation as 2x over 2. And that's basically it. That gets you a merit. Alright, let's have a look at the next question then. Now guys, this works for this particular question. I would still recommend you to watch that video because it shows you how to do it when c is not equal to 0. So there are other ways you can do it as well. Okay. Anyway, let's go to the next question. Alright guys, so we're going to use the table from the previous example here. All right, so we know that when it was 1, 2, 3, 4, our values was 1, 2, 4, 8. So when we actually reflect this on the y-axis, at -4, it's going to be at 8. Okay, so I'm going to put -4 first at 8. At -3, it's going to be at +4. At -2, it's going to be at +2. At -1, it's going to be at 1. And what we have is we've got our graph that's actually reflected on the y-axis. Okay, now here's the thing though, it still is not gonna, well, I know it's a terrible graph, but it's not really supposed to be touching the x-axis. So we know that y is equal to ARX plus C, but because C is the asymptote, which is this point right here, C is going to equal to 0, so I don't have to worry about it. But however, look at what's happened to the value of R now. If you look at this, you're actually going 8 minus 4 to get to 4, 4 minus 2, 2 minus 1. So if you look at the light blue values, they're no longer doubling, but they're actually halving. So you can say multiply by half, which means the ratio is now equal to half. So we can rewrite this equation now as y equals a multiplied by half to the power of x. So we need to get a value, a set of coordinates to actually figure out what the a value is. And I'm going to use -1 and 1 again. So I've got y equals to 1 and a equals, well, a is what we're trying to figure out, and half to the power of -1. When you put half to the power of -1 in your calculator, you should get 2. So you should get 1 is equal to a times 2, which means a is equal to half. So when we have the original equation, it's going to be y is equal to half multiplied by half to the power of x. And guys, that should get you an excellence for this particular question. All right. If you make a minor mistake, you'd get an achieved, but that's how you get an excellence for this question. All right, let's have a look at the next question. Also, guys, for the previous question, your answer schedule might actually give a completely different answer, but the answer that I've given is just given in a different format. Okay, just keep that in mind. Anyway, let's have a look at this question here. So what do we got? In the first 3 months, an average of 4,000 people visited each month. So basically in the first 3 months, we're going to get 4,000, 4,000, and 4,000. Then after the first 3 months, the attendance began to drop by 15% each month for the next 9 months. Okay, so what do we got? We got to complete the table. So, I mean, you don't actually need to use it this way. You can find what, you can basically just do it like this. 4,000 times 0.85 to the power of 1, because that's going to give you how much it's decreased after the 3rd month, which should equal 3,400. Okay, then you're decreasing 3,400 by another 15%, so just multiplied by 0.85, and rounding it, you should get 2890 as your second value. And basically, guys, that gets you a merit by the looks of it. Yeah, table correctly completed as a merit. 2 months correct gets you an achieved. I think this is probably the easiest merit you can probably get in this paper. All right, let's go to the second part of this question. Now, the second part says, draw a graph showing the approximate number of people visiting the fun park. So basically, for the first 3 months, you're at 4,000. So what do we have? 4,000, 4,000, 4,000. And then in the 4th month, you're going to 3,400. 5th month, you're going to 2890, which is roughly, I mean, here. So guys, what you're trying to do is you're basically just trying to work the graph, plot those points that you have in the previous question in this. So next point is 2457, which is somewhere there. 2088 for the 7th month. 2088 is going to be somewhere there. Whoa, sorry, can't draw with a stylus. Then 1775, which is going to be here. 1509. 1282. You just keep going, guys. Basically, what they say in the answer schedule is that you can't actually draw it as a consistent graph drawn as discrete or continuous. Okay, so you can actually connect them if you want to, but I would actually leave it as well, actually no, you can connect them because it could be continuous. But anyway, you need to get 5 points correct for this particular grade of a merit. I thought the first one was easy, but I think this is easier. Okay, let's go to the next part of this question, which is question 3. Now it says at the end of the month, the number of visitors dropped below 2,000 for the first time. Management decided to only open on weekends. So we're trying to figure out, find how many months of the year the park was open only on the weekends, and explain by using features of the graph how this information can be found. I really should have not deleted those little dots. But anyway, we know a few things though. Like, for example, we're trying to figure out when it actually drops below 2000. I think it was between the 7 and 8 mark, where it was at 2088. So 7 was 2088, and then 8 was 1775, which is somewhere there. Okay, so what you can do is you can actually go, well, dropped below 2000, right? So you're actually looking for this point right there. Okay, by the end of the month. So basically, guys, you can see that when it reaches around somewhere between the 7th month and at the end of the 8th month, the numbers actually drop below 2000. So what I've done is I've actually plotted the 2 points, and I've kind of said that 2000 is here, and it's roughly between 7 or 8 months. So it happens between the 7th and 8th month. Now the question actually says at the end of the month, the number of visitors drop below 2000. They only open on weekends. So find how many months of the year the park was open only on the weekends. So we can kind of see at the end of the 8th month, so at conclusion, hang on, let me just get a different pen. At end of 8th month, population dropped below 2000, which means out of the 12 months, 4 months, they were open only weekends. Weekends only. And I think that's pretty much it. Stated to get a merit. It's not, yeah, it's a really weird question, this one. In all honesty, I've never seen so many easy merits to come along. But anyway, that's what we were given. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Alright guys, so the equation that we were originally working for this particular question was P equals 4000 times 0.85 n minus 3. That was what the equation that we were originally working with was. However, for this second part of this question, it says in the second year more people visit the park during first 3 months. So that means we're not having 4,000 people, but we've got a lot more people that's actually visiting. But they're saying that the rate that it declines is the same. So we know that this is still going to be 0.85. But the thing is, the manager wants to limit to a maximum of 2 months when the park is running just on the weekends. Now, previously in the question, we found out that it was 8th month, right? So it was the 8th month that actually the park started going less than 2,000. So in this case, we want it to be in the 10th month. So what we do know is we want the population to be 2,000. We don't know what we're starting with, because remember in this first case we started with 4,000, but in this particular case we don't actually know what the minimum requirement is in the first 3 months, so we're just going to put that as A, multiplied by 0.85. Now n minus 3, so it's the 10th month, and it's still going to look like minus 3. So that's what the equation would look like. So at this point, to figure out what A is, we just need to rearrange this and rewrite this as 2,000 divided by 0.85 to the power of 7. And when we do that, we get A value as 6,238.7. But here's the thing, you can't really have 6,000, well, you can't really have 0.7 of a person, okay? So what we are going to suggest is that we can't actually have under as well. So we can't actually have 6,238 people, because if we do that, then I think it would reach 2,000 before the 10th month. So to be on the safe side, we're going to recommend that there should be 6,239 people, or at least a minimum of that. So yep, and that's basically it. So if you had written the equation with something like this, you are looking at a merit, and I think the final answer you're looking at excellence. Cool, that's basically it for this question, guys. As usual, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, pop it in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video, guys, and please feel free to share this with your mates as well. And thanks for watching.